a little bit more organized. But we're looking forward to today's presentation. Today's topic is learn about personalized resources to support you and your family living with myeloma. The Janssen team reached out to the myeloma crowd and wondered if there were opportunities that they could share their personalized resources for patients. And I thought that this chapter was a great medium to be able to share those resources with you. Our top priorities at the Myeloma Crowd by HealthTree is to accelerate a cure and to support patients. A great way that I can think of to support myeloma patients is to hear directly from these companies that make the myeloma treatments and learn how they are helping patients to avoid financial toxicity, provide education about the treatments provided and administered, and to support emotionally the families living with multiple myeloma. We have 3 guest speakers today that are going to speak to these programs that have been personally designed for our patient population and their families, and we are really excited for you to hear from them. It is now my pleasure to introduce them to you. Kurt is excited to share how to have the most informed discussion with your care team. Kurt works as a senior oncology clinical educator for Janssen in the Rocky Mountain Territory, which is beautiful. We were talking about that earlier. He is a master's prepared oncology clinical nurse specialist, CNS, who also holds a PhD in molecular biology genetic engineering. He has nearly 15 years of oncology nursing experience within the inpatient and outpatient settings, as well as the pharmaceutical sector as a nurse educator and medical science liaison. Kurt holds ACRN, AOCNS, and OCN nursing certifications. So we're excited to have his genius mind here with us today. And now Heather can't wait to share the type of support available through Janssen Compass, for which she currently works as a care navigator in the Illinois-Michigan territory. Heather is a lifetime Michigander, completing her VA at Michigan State University in 1998 and her BSN at Wayne State University in 2007. And Heather worked at Karmanos Cancer Center Institute, in Detroit, Michigan for 13 years, and 9 of those years were on an inpatient oncology unit and 4 years as an oncology urgent care clinic. And she became an oncology certified nurse in 2019. We're really happy to have her here. Last but not least is Brian. He has been with Janssen for 18 years across numerous roles in sales, leadership, training, and marketing across oncology. He is leading the launch of the Janssen Compass program, which is a new program designed to personalize the patient experience with the nurse, providing education and resources during a patient's treatment journey on Janssen therapy. So I will turn the time over to Brian to do his introductions, and then we can get started with today's presentation. So thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Thanks, Audrey. Well, hey, everybody. As she said, I'm Brian Drennan with Janssen Oncology, and we're a part of Johnson & Johnson. And today's really a special day for us because we rarely get the chance to learn directly from such a large group of patients. So we definitely hope to make it an open discussion and learn from you. The more that we learn from you helps us help more patients. So as you see, I'm already joined by a few of my esteemed colleagues today that I'm very happy to bring on today. And really, we all work at Janssen, but many of us have been caregivers in the past, or obviously, as you can see, oncology nurses that have taken care of patients. And our company is really committed to developing the most advanced therapies in pursuit of a cure, therapies like Darzalex that you may know of. And that these have a significant investment so far that we've really placed in hematologic cancers, including myeloma. And our commitment really doesn't stop there. It's really to develop education and holistic support programs for really to support all of you as well as your loved ones so far. And that really comes into the last 6 years, we've been able to support thousands of patients in myeloma with our medications and have learned really a couple of important things. And one really more importantly is that there's not really a lack of resources, but really a lack of awareness of resources, that patients are not always told of those at the time that they're diagnosed. And then the other is making sure that patients have really been able to be educated to make the most informed discussion with their doctors, because the disease may be relatively small compared to other cancer types. So a few opportunities that led us to creating educational programs that we're really excited to share with you today. So this education and support will really help share with yourselves and your caregivers to hopefully bring some new resources to the table that you may or may not be aware of. So the first one that we'll start with is, as you've already seen with Kurt, our clinical educator, can offer really to a group of patients on how they can have better informed discussions with their doctors. So Kurt, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you as I get the slides going in 1 second to introduce a little bit more about yourself and your background as we get ready to dive in.
Thank you very much. It really is a pleasure to be here with you today. So in the 20 minutes that I have with you, I hope to explain what shared decision-making is, and I encourage you to consider implementing some of the strategies we will discuss in future interactions with your healthcare team. But before I delve into the content, I have a couple of housekeeping slides to present for your awareness. Could we move there we go. Next slide, please. Oh, me. Okay, so as you know, I'm Kurt, and I am based in Denver, Colorado. I've spent my entire nursing career in oncology, and like so many other of my colleagues, a lot of us are drawn to oncology based on personal experiences we've had, or members of our family who have been living with cancer. As far as our program disclosures, I do work for Janssen Biotech. Janssen has developed this deck. And I do have really strict guidelines from the FDA not to provide any medical advice or make specific treatment suggestions. Next slide, please. So the content in this deck has received the Oncology Nursing Society seal of approval for containing information that is evidence-based, timely, and relevant to people living with cancer, their loved ones, as well as practicing oncology nurses. So for those of us who are oncology certified, ONS is really our compass. Next slide, please. So due to the time constraints that we have today, I will use an abbreviated deck to provide an overview of shared decision-making. But should any regional chapter desire the unabridged presentation, the oncology clinical educator team is happy to arrange that upon request. So my first question is, has anyone ever heard of shared decision-making before today? And I'll rely on Audrey if she doesn't mind to see what comes up in the chat box.
Of course, let me just remind them that they can find the chat at the bottom of the screen if they click on our faces. So feel free to enter into the chat. Thanks. I don't think many people have heard of it because there's
no, good. Oh, okay.
So
well,
this
then
is great.
I hope today is helpful. So to level set our understanding, shared decision-making is an exchange of information to enable well-informed, preference-based decision-making. So not only do we want to be educated before we make a decision, but we want to make sure that when we're making the decision that jointly with our healthcare team, that they're aware of what our likes and dislikes are in a nutshell. So the objective of this presentation is to assist you with incorporating a strategy called the SHARE approach into conversations with the healthcare team to ensure your voice is being heard in decisions that affect you. At the heart of shared decision-making is the importance of respecting the informed preferences of individual patients, even when they may differ from the preferences of the quote-unquote average patient or the average practitioner. Next slide, please. As we know, myeloma is a complex blood cancer that is chronic in nature, but unfortunately has no cure. The course of the disease differs for each individual living with it. So there is no single right decision for how the life of health and illness should be lived. Every patient and every provider brings his or her own motivations, interests, and expectations to the decision-making process. Only through conversation can we understand each other's viewpoints and align on priorities and next steps. So decision-making in myeloma really is not a one-and-done process, applicable only for those who are newly diagnosed. Preferences about life goals and treatments are not chiseled in stone and likely will change over time. There will be many opportunities for employing shared decision-making throughout a patient's journey. Next slide, please. So ideally, shared decision-making is a process of communication, deliberation, and choosing an option during which one or more clinicians share with the patient information about relevant testing and treatments, including the risks and benefits and other treatment options. And sometimes another option is the choice of no treatment. The patient explores and shares with clinicians his or her preferences, goals, and values, and through a process of reflection and discussion, both parties reach a mutual decision. Next slide, please. The good news about myeloma these days is there is a lot to talk about with your healthcare team, especially when it comes to treatment choices. Myeloma is a plasma cell cancer that is under intense active clinical research, and many novel therapies have been approved over the last 10 to 15 years. But no one treatment is best for everyone, and each therapy carries its own benefits and challenges. The goal is to find which treatment or combination of treatments is best suited for that individual at that particular time. Next slide, please. So what are the rewards for engaging in shared decision-making? Well, we have some instant gratification. The person living with myeloma gains enhanced knowledge and understanding about the disease and its treatment, which can increase confidence in choosing a path customized to the individual's desires. And then we can have some delayed gratification benefits. This process can build trust between patients and their caregivers, which can lead to patients taking more personal ownership of the treatment plan. Now, active involvement likely promotes better medication adherence, which can translate into better outcomes, both improved physical as well as emotional well-being. And a key outcome of the process is more satisfaction with the management of your care and hopefully fewer decisional regrets. What we really want to avoid is that, I could have had a V8 moment. But in all seriousness, some of the treatment decisions that are made in myeloma are very complex, and some are life-altering, and there is no going back. So we want to make sure that we're really well-informed and really on board with the treatment process. Next slide, please. So, in your interactions with your healthcare team, how often do you engage in shared decision-making? Now, I know a lot of you have already shared with me that, you don't necessarily invoke shared decision-making, but there's probably certain parts of it that you might do. But I was just curious if there was anyone wanted to share, what kinds of questions do you ask when you're presented with new treatments? Or sometimes is it hard to break the ice? I'm just kind of curious to see, Audrey, if there's any kind of feedback.
All right, we'll wait to see if there's anything. We got a quiet group today.
Well, hopefully I'm not going too fast. Sometimes when I get nervous, I kind of speed up.
No, you're doing great. Some of the questions that I know, definitely what kind of, we're getting these now they're starting to come in. Looking at side effects, definitely how effective is this? We got a couple questions yesterday, is this chemotherapy or immunotherapy? And how long has this been approved for? Those are questions that have been coming in and that I've heard as well.
That's great. Yep, and those are right in line with what we're going to be discussing. The whole point of the share approach that we're going to talk about later on is it's really having a structured conversation with your healthcare provider to ensure that nothing is left undiscussed. And so we do have a tool at the end that patients are welcome to utilize if that will help. Next slide, please, Brian. So the main question is, how can I become more involved in the decision-making process? Where do I start? So people living with myeloma face multiple situations throughout their journey where more than one treatment option is medically appropriate and no single option is clearly superior. So trade-offs need to be made based on preferences, values, and goals. So really at the end of the day, it's going to take a little bit of self-reflection and say, what matters most to me? So in order to try and navigate through a sea of options, the first step is to just be open to the idea of actively participating with the medical team and engaging in open dialogue. But it does start with you, the patient. Being your own advocate is not always easy, especially if you don't feel well. But this really is the time to dig deep and channel your own inner Norma Ray, your own Rosa Parks, your Aaron Brockovich, or whoever your motivational hero is. I know with my mom's cancer journey, she actually was a fan of Elizabeth Taylor, and often she say that now is the time for guts and guile. And that was a famous quote that Elizabeth Taylor did. But that kind of in moments of where, she was having a hard time, she would just kind of rely on. But when you stop to think about what some of the challenges are to engaging in shared decision-making, what do you think some of them might be if you wanted to try and implement this program the next time you see your healthcare provider? And if anyone wants to mention in the chat. So there can be barriers both from a patient side as well as a provider side.
Disparities is one of them, like racial disparities.
Sure, access to care. Yep, maybe not having a trusted, open dialogue with your healthcare team. Certainly.
Lack
Okay.
of, sorry, just this last one, lack of education, just wondering, trying to get the basics down and not really speaking the same language as the doctor, feeling that way.
Sure. Okay, let's reveal, and those are all awesome answers. Thank you so much. And then there's one other side. So from the patient side, really being hesitant to speak up and feeling unsure. This might be really pronounced in the beginning part of your relationship with the provider, especially for someone who's newly diagnosed. But, many patients' interactions with clinicians have remained unchanged from their parents' generation, where the mindset was, well, the physician knows what's best for the patient. And as a result, the patient's viewpoint was left out of the decision process. Perhaps it wasn't intentional, but some of us, we may have been conditioned by societal norms to be more passive in such encounters. I clearly remember my mom's initial oncology consultation when she was diagnosed with cancer, and I was in college many decades ago. She barely asked any questions, I vividly remember, and later told me she didn't ask more questions because she didn't want to bother the doctor because, quote, he clearly looked busy and, he was the expert anyway, so he would know what's best. This was before I was a nurse, and I feel like we were kind of victims of circumstance because at that time in the 1980s, the term shared decision-making wasn't widely known or wasn't widely implemented. So I would like to, hope that this would not be something that is going to be universally shared in the future. But language for those patients who, English is not their primary language, it can be very challenging sometimes for, the patient as well as the healthcare provider to find a certified medical interpreter to really make sure that we are imparting, clinically relevant and fair, balanced information. That sometimes there can be differences in the ultimate goals of care between the patient and the caregiver. Sometimes we get into conversations about quality of life versus quantity of life. And then when we look on the side on some of the barriers for the healthcare team, if you could build the slide one more time, Brian, really time is going to be the factor that is really going to be maybe limited. Healthcare professionals are under the clock a lot of time. But so other than the time factor, sometimes there can be different wants or needs between the doctor and between, or, the healthcare team and between the patient. This sometimes is apparent when there might be a young clinician who may be really interested in having the patient pursue an aggressive course of therapy. And sometimes, you might have an older patient who's very treatment experienced, and there just might not be a meeting of the minds as far as how aggressive does the patient really want the treatment to be. So these are just some examples of sometimes the challenges that we can encounter. Next slide, please. But working with your healthcare team really can help address some of these barriers. Although there are challenges to overcome, it is possible to find common ground that can help remove some of these barriers. So I'm curious, I'm guessing there are many of you out there who might be fans of Jeopardy or Trivial Pursuit. Maybe, is that a yes? I was just curious, does anyone know what the name of this type of diagram is? Just out of curiosity. So if you're ever in Final Jeopardy, know that I'll be at home rooting for you. Do we have any takers?
It's a Venn diagram, isn't it?
Yes, awesome. Okay, so Venn, V-E-N-N. So this is a Venn diagram, and it was popularized by John Venn in the 1880s. So it's been out there for a while. It really shows the overlap or the connectedness between different groups. So another way to think of it is it shows the commonality among different ideas or concepts. So optimal myeloma treatment decisions are at the intersection of patient preferences, the clinical experience of the healthcare team, and the latest evidence-based practices. So really here, the patient's preferences are equally weighted in importance with the other two factors, and they really can influence which treatment choices are which treatment options are made available to the patient. But once again, the healthcare team are not mind readers. They have to understand what the patient's preferences are. Sometimes the preferences can be financial, out-of-pocket costs, levels of mobility, living pain-free. So there are many things that the patient can bring to the table that can help modify the treatment plan. Next slide, please. So the tagline for this slide really is, it takes a village to diagnose, treat, and manage the complex needs of people living with myeloma. Listed here are some of the key members of the multidisciplinary team. And there's one profession that is missing, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point it out. Does anyone have any idea which key member of the multidisciplinary team is not named by title here? Any takers? The patient, very good.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And then the other one is social work. So we were it was really ingrained in our heads as a newly licensed registered nurse on the unit that discharge planning starts at admission. In order to really set the patient up for success after discharge, social work really needed to get some of these ancillary services set up for the patient to make sure that the patient didn't, encounter problems and come back for admission with the same initial problem. So when you're looking at the left side of the slide, there are a number of nursing roles, and depending on the institutional setting where you're receiving care, whether you're in an academic center or a community center, some of the nurses will fulfill multiple roles. So I'm going to show my age here, but often when I think about multitasking, many nurses do. I'm reminded of a perfume commercial that aired in the early 1980s when I used to watch soap operas with my grandmother. Other seasoned individuals on the virtual meeting may likely remember this commercial, but the key message of the ad was that the product was the 8-hour perfume for the 24-hour woman. And so there was a little jingle with the song. It started out with, I can bring home the bacon, and you'd see the woman in a tailored business suit with a fistful of money, and she goes, I can fry it up in a pan. And then it would show the various different roles that the working woman fulfilled in her family and in society in general. But likewise, there are many roles that nurses take on in a busy hematology clinic. And usually a nurse will take on the role of being the nurse navigator role, and will coordinate communications with the various specialties that make up the multidisciplinary team, but not always. So many of the stakeholders at the table, it's helpful to have a plan to express what's important to you. If you could, next slide, please, Brian. So this is the acronym that we're going to use. It is called the SHARE approach. And so I know there's a lot of acronyms in your mind, a lot of medical jargon that can be seen. But, really research has shown that unstructured conversations between patients and healthcare professionals can really not result in fair, balanced, informative information that allows the patient to really make, a really informed decision. And so here is seek information and come prepared to discuss with your healthcare team. So you have to be open to the idea of participation. Help is the H, help your healthcare team give you the best information. Sometimes many of us prefer to have words. Sometimes people prefer pictures. So it all depends on what is working best for you. And then assess your interests and your priorities and ask questions. So this is where you're going to communicate some preferences to your healthcare team, reach a decision, and in a perfect world, we're going to reevaluate it because decisions change over time. So it's not, we really want to really see if everyone is still on board with the decision that has been made. So next slide, please. So this is on the left is really the S, the seeking. How do you want to be and how involved do you want to be? Involvement can be minimal to highly engaged just based on your personality. And do you have any family or friends who may want to help or be involved in your care? Now, obviously, within the last year and a half, COVID has really complicated the process of shared decision-making among oncologists, patients, and their caregivers. Sometimes with visitor restrictions, you might not be able to get that psychological or emotional support that you have come to rely upon. For years, as healthcare professionals, we said, hey, bring a friend, bring a loved one. 4 ears are better than 2. And sometimes with these restrictions, it is challenging to be able to fully embrace that. Also, if you do have inpatient visits during COVID, sometimes, there's that actual enhanced psychologically stressful situation because what we're concerned about is maybe contracting the virus. And then for those patients who might not be as tech savvy, because obviously you're all tech savvy because you had no problems logging onto this, but sometimes this can really enhance some of the technological education gaps that some of us might have if we have a virtual consult with our healthcare team. And on the right is, what are the treatment characteristics that are important to you? It's really trying to ask those kind of questions like, how frequent is the treatment? Is it oral? Is it, an IV? Is it subcutaneous? Will I be administering it myself? You're trying to visualize what that treatment will look like in your routine. Next slide, please. And then this is really where you're going to really assess your preferences, your goals. What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want the healthcare team to really be uppermost in their mind when you're talking about treatments? Because it is important for them to have some idea of what an outcome of interest is for you. Is it maybe aggressive treatment and, I can endure, a really aggressive line of treatment for a short amount of time, and hopefully get my disease into remission. And then as we've mentioned earlier, sometimes when patients go from one line of therapy to another, there can be different life goals that are more important to the patient. So it's really trying to articulate in the best way possible what's important to you. Next slide, please. And so we don't think, obviously we're not, we're recognizing the fact that you're probably not going to memorize this acronym right off the bat, but what we do have, and these tools, they're checklists. And they're really conversation starters. So it breaks the acronym down into each part of the shared decision-making process. We have one that is for the newly diagnosed patient and one for the more experienced patient. And what we've really done is we've held focus groups where we've invited patients such as yourself to come to the table and tell us what is important, what is it that you really want to make sure that you come away with that healthcare interaction being more informed about. And so this is how some of these questions have come to be. And so it's based on the acronym, and we'd be happy to send these to Audrey for dissemination among your group, and we're happy to share that with you. Next slide, please. So I really, really wanted to thank you for this opportunity today. This has been the highlight of my month. I don't get to really engage with patients as much as I used to, and I really value this interaction, and I'm happy to answer any questions if we have some time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kurt. That was awesome. And as you went through that, I'm really looking forward to, in a different occasion, getting the full presentation, because I feel like this is something that is key to a patient's best care. And also, this is what's going to help accelerate a cure when patients are empowered and educated enough to make shared decision-making with their specialists. I think sometimes patients underestimate how much their knowledge can help a physician know how this drug should be properly used in the clinic, in a clinical setting, And anyway, this is really exciting and I really enjoyed your presentation. So thank you for taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you so much.
If we have any questions for Kurt, you're more than welcome to answer, put them into the chat. Something else that was mentioned that I thought was interesting is there's cost issues. Sometimes they're not going to support different tests. I know, especially in this world right now where MRD, some people are really for it and some people are kind of not as for it. And some insurance is covered and some don't. There's always that cost of, or even simple treatments that are recommended are astronomically expensive. And so then it comes into the play of, do our physicians know about these payment programs that can help our patients? And do our patients know really what the cost is of these drugs that are being recommended to them? So it's a pretty
that's a presentation on itself. It's so unfortunate in our society that, when you're faced with such a life-altering diagnosis that, you have to really consider cost.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, really. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. Thank you. Well, if any more questions pop up, I will ask them at the end, but thank you so much for your presentation. And Brian, I turn the time back over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Audrey and Kurt. Great job. I know there's a lot more information you can continue to go on, but we'll make sure everybody can get connected to it. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move forward here, guys. And now you'll be able to get to hear from Heather Hanneman, our care navigator from Michigan. And we're going to move over to really one of our other patient programs that we're able to provide for anybody on Janssen therapy, such as Darzalex or Darzalex Fast Pro. And that's called Janssen Compass. And this has really been a program that has been built from the ground up, starting over from scratch this year. And it's all based on meeting the patient's today's needs. We had a lot of feedback from patients, from providers, from advocacy groups, from caregivers on really where some of the gaps were and some of the needs. And this is really where we were able to build this program, Janssen Compass, to give one-on-one support, really to connect you with a dedicated care navigator the day you start therapy, who can provide education assistance in 4 key areas you'll learn more about. And that's cost and access, which is great timing, because I know we just talked about that. Also medication education, self-coping skills, and health and wellness. And this is the first time we've been able to really show all of the resources to patients and help you all personalize it to exactly what you need and kind of choose your own adventure. So that is something that was also a very big North Star, was every patient said, please customize it and personalize it to me so it feels like it's something that meets my needs. And that's what we're here to do. So we'll be providing an overview of the program, how you can enroll, and more details here in a moment. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Heather, to go ahead and give some background on the program and more details.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Yes, I'm Heather Hanneman, and I'm the care navigator for Michigan and Illinois. And I'm so happy to be here today to share the Janssen Compass program. I'm going to give you an overview of the program and its purpose, and then hopefully be able to answer some questions for you. So Janssen Oncology has a vision for what they would like their patient experience to be. The goal is to transition the patient experience from the current state, which is designed for healthcare providers, somewhat fragmented, and really requires the patient to self-navigate, to a future state, which is designed for the patient with a single point of contact and navigation through guided conversations. The goal is to support you, the patient, through your treatment journey. Janssen Compass was designed in response to market research, indicating what your needs as the patient are. Janssen reached out to some patient groups to find out what patients need to better support them. Through this research, Janssen learned about what patients want. You want to know what to expect from your treatment and side effects so that you can be best prepared. You want to connect with other patients who've had similar experiences. You want to have access to reliable resources when you need them, including emotional support and mental health resources. Patients have requested tips on how to talk to your doctors and loved ones about your experiences and about your needs. And as we know, every patient is different, so it has to be personalized and flexible. So these were the key factors being considered when designing the Janssen Compass program. Janssen Compass was created to fill your identified needs, offering you a single point of contact with a care navigator who has a nursing background to add support through your patient journey. Like Brian mentioned, we really focused on 4 pillars. So the first pillar is cost access, which is providing education on navigating coverage, accessing savings programs, foundations, and affordability support. For example, when you call, we can check your insurance. We can see if you qualify for support from the manufacturer, support from your state, or direct you towards any foundation support that you might qualify for. The second pillar being medication education, which is exactly what it sounds like. We can educate you about your treatment and how to navigate the onboarding experience. This is especially helpful in the beginning. We can help you throughout your treatment, but in the beginning, when you're first figuring out what to expect, what side effects you may experience, what the first day of treatment is going to look like, these are all things that we can help walk you through. The third pillar is health and wellness, which is focusing on life beyond treatment, setting goals and making meaningful connections. We can help you find support and advocacy groups in your own area. And we have a whole library of resources available. For example, if you were to let your care navigator know that you were concerned about life beyond diagnosis, we have websites and resources that we can provide you with and walk you through to help you figure out how to deal with that and what to learn about it. The fourth pillar is self-coping skills, which is education about coping with cancer along with dealing with stress and anxiety. One of the most stressful things can be preparing for your doctor's appointments. So your care navigator has time to spend with you, preparing these difficult conversations, making a list of questions, going through what to expect from the appointment, and then organizing all of that information so that when you go in to see your doctor or your care provider, you can make the most of that time. But as a reminder, your care navigator is not here to perform a nursing function. We will always refer you back to your healthcare provider for any medical advice or treatment. So the program is designed to be personalized. We will start with a sign-up call, which is the most formal of all of our calls, as we will be collecting information to sign you up and reviewing some disclaimers. During the sign-up call, we will also answer any immediate questions or concerns. But moving forward after that initial call, the calls will be very personalized, and the timing of the calls will be prioritized by you. So you'll be the one kind of navigating and letting us know how often you'd like to talk to us and what you'd like to talk to us about. During the welcome call, we will assess your specific needs and prepare for treatment. But we will also spend some time getting to know each other. And as we move through these calls, we will assist you in setting goals, providing education, but also focusing on what's important to you. We will have discussions about life on treatment, including preparing for meaningful discussions with your loved ones, with your peers, and with your healthcare team. There will also be personalized check-in calls to continue conversations and address topics that you have identified as meaningful. At the end of each call, we will discuss a good time for the next call, but you don't ever have to wait for that call date to talk to us. The care navigators are available to you Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30 within each time zone. So you can call us anytime, and we're available from Miami to Seattle. So signing up is easy. There are no forms involved. Resources are all available via email, and we can even send you text messages to remind you about future calls. When we sign you up for the program, you'll be sent out a welcome kit. Did that flip to the next? There we go. The welcome kit. This kit is product specific depending on which medication you're prescribed. And you can see it includes a bag, a keychain, some colored pencils, but the most important thing it contains is the Compass guidebook. And the guidebook is just that, a guide through your treatment journey. We will discuss the guidebook on each of our calls, and you can use it also as a self-reflection tool. Also included in your welcome kit are some conversation cards. These cards can help guide difficult conversations with your loved ones, your support network, but also with your healthcare provider. So these can be really helpful when you're trying to figure out what you need to ask at your appointments, what you need to discuss with your family, and how to discuss these difficult things. Once you're prescribed the medication, the contact with the program can be initiated by either your healthcare provider using the Contact Me form or by you, the patient. Your healthcare provider may give you this one-page pamphlet with a QRS code that can link you directly to the program. Patient can also just reach out to us directly by visiting www.janssencompass.com, and you can fill out your own Contact Me form. It's as easy as giving us your name, your phone number, and your zip code. And a care navigator will reach out to you from your region within 24 hours. You can also call us directly at any time. Our number is 1-844-628-1234. It's an easy number to remember because 628 translates to NAV, which is short for Navigator. So you can call us anytime, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. We have 11 care navigators throughout the United States, and we're all from different regions and different time zones. We all have nursing backgrounds, many with oncology certifications and advanced degrees. We have bilingual care navigators, and we all come from very diverse and unique experiences and backgrounds. Here in the picture, you can see two of our care navigators, Laura, who's covering Florida and Georgia, and James covering the Great Plains State, just to help put a name with the face. Again, a reminder, we're here for education and support, but not to replace the medical care of your healthcare team. The care navigators are all really excited to be a part of Janssen Compass because we all truly see the value in supporting our oncology patients through this journey. So thank you so much for letting me share this information with you today. And at this point, I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Heather. And we already had one that came through, which was, I answered, are we always going to have the same care navigator?
The goal is that, yes, you will have the same care navigator, and it will be someone from your region of the United States.
That's great. So as seeing how easy the website is, I'll go ahead and show and share with that here just in a moment. But as you heard from Heather, as easy as it is just a name, phone number, and zip code, no enrollment form. That's all done over a recorded line. Those were specific steps definitely shared by patients to make it easier, less cumbersome, and just a way to get contacted and learn more before having to enroll in anything. We're happy that all patients right now, 100% that have been contacted so far, have enrolled into the program so far for Darzalex as well as other Janssen therapies. So that's a great sign so far. So let's see if there's any other questions in the chat or comments.
There was a question posed to me about which medications or treatments, or I don't know, I usually say drugs, so I'm trying to think of a different word.
Oh, that's fine, I got it.
Are Janssen treatments for myeloma, because they're unaware. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're also heavily invested in future therapies for this, but right now this is launching for Darzalex, our IV, and Darzalex Fast Pro, our sub-Q.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, well, let me go ahead and share screen and switch over to sharing our Compass website here. Just one second. That way you can see just the ease of use it is so far to be able to get in, get connected pretty quickly with one of your care navigators. All right. So as you can see, this is janssencompass.com. Definitely a easy microsite that you can scroll through to just learn more about, again, hearing that it's your go-to program with free one-on-one education from one of our care navigators. You can see the Connect with Us tab on the right, but it helps you get one, clarity with clear answers and education, one-on-one with a nurse, and to really help build confidence through all the resources that are out there that we talked about. You can get started there requesting a call or call directly. And a lot of questions we got back were, questions initially: how do I fill the prescription? How's the medicine given? What are some side effects to expect? What about out-of-pocket costs? As a lot of people are starting new therapies, is always a question. How do I make it easy to sign up, just meet a care navigator and customize the support that I need? And then you can see a couple FAQs at the bottom. So let's go ahead and click on the button. And it is as simple as this one page. It's a patient or also a caregiver. As we know, many patients obviously have, hopefully have a caregiver, some loved one, there's some support network that can also help them enroll. But it's as simple as your name, phone number, and zip code. And you can even agree if you want text messages, and that'll get you in the queue for somebody like Heather to call the next day. We also added another step, personalizing it to make sure you can choose a certain preferred day or time. So if it's better to say, hey, it's, I'm always free on Wednesday mornings, or Thursday afternoons work better for me, we can also do that, which is great. And then you submit. That puts you in the queue to be contacted by Care Navigator the next day, and you can enroll right there on the phone and receive your welcome kit and start personalizing what's important to you and what you want to learn more about.
That's really simple. I'm really impressed. Sometimes those are a little bit more difficult, so I'm glad with the way that you guys have designed that. There is a question here wondering if the support is always by phone.
So we have it right now by phone. We also have it by email. We also have it by text message. So we want to make sure to meet patients where they are and where they want to be communicated. And we're continuing to build out other capabilities, as well as looking at different app infrastructures and other ways that we can make sure to meet patients' needs.
Awesome. Okay. Does the Care Navigator ever coordinate with insurance? With the insurance for the...
With insurance, not directly this time. What we do is immediately on that first call is already able to check the patient's insurance, if they have government insurance or if they have commercial insurance. If they do, we can even go a step further to help them qualify, see if they qualify for one and how to enroll in certain programs. If that's low income subsidy for government insured, what's also great is for our copay support cards, which we have as manufacturers. A lot of patients don't know about those or aware of those too late. Even if you're paying a small out of pocket, some could be paying $0 or even $5, for instance, for Darzalex. So we make sure that 100% of patients are aware of all of those resources based on their insurance.
That's great. Yeah, that's really important. Another question that was entered was like, does the caregiver have to, is it a together thing? Does the patient and the caregiver both talk to the nurse? Can it just be one or the other?
If a patient
yes,
gives us permission, we can talk to their support or caregiver as well. So it's up to the patient what kind of support
Can
they
the
want.
caregiver just call? This question was the caregiver just wants to call and talk, kind of because the patient's not really on board with getting more help. So are they able to call and make the connection and get things set up without being the patient themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, what's great is also we've learned just through a lot of the research and speaking with patients that there also is a heavy need for even more resources for the caregivers. So a future vision for the program is to really build out its own sleeve for caregivers, care partners, and make sure they have additional resources and support as well. But right now we're learning, gathering that, and making sure we can speak with both.
That's great. Awesome. And then Kurt, there was a question for you in terms of your presentation. Do you have a specific disparity or, racial disparities presentation that you can, like version of that you can give, or more detail that you can go in to in a different setting about that?
So the only two decks I currently have is one that is a quote unquote branded. It talks about Darzalex Faspro and then the shared decision making deck.
Okay.
But there are other questions about where the oncology clinical educator team is well versed with the patient population that is living with multiple myeloma and the various ethnicities that are impacted. So there is some information that we can talk about to
Okay.
specialize or customize the presentation.
Awesome. Okay, we do have time for more questions and you want to enter your questions. Again, it's a little bit of a quiet group, and I think a lot of people will watch the recording and I'll probably get questions then as they usually come in. So am I able to pass those questions along to you afterwards, Brian, if I'm
Yeah,
getting those
absolutely.
questions?
Yeah, we'd welcome any and all. So
Perfect.
I don't see any others in the chats right now.
Okay. Heather, I do have to say, I love your accent. I know it's hard to hear your own accent, but I love it so much. It's so fun.
I get that a lot. People always ask if I'm from Canada, but it's right across the lake. I can practically see it.
That's awesome. Good.
Great.
Well,
Well, I will definitely add in a couple of closing comments before then, as if we don't have any other questions, which I don't see anymore at the moment. I know common questions that we receive.
yourself well.
Yeah, well, and this is luckily a good chance for us to hopefully answer questions throughout our presentation that we've been getting the whole time building this, really with a lot of patient support.
Right.
So that's been exciting. I know things that have really stood out to them so far is, one, being confirmed it's a free program, having a single point of contact in their area, somebody that's trusted that they know, and it's the same person that'll be with them their entire journey, has really been a big differentiator. And making sure that it's easy, different forms of communication that we can speak with them through text, through email, through phone, being there available, having their own extension to reach out to their own care navigator, definitely made a big difference. I see a question from Anita there, is if it's for new patients or can others be included? Yeah, this is for new or existing patients. If you've been on Darzalex for 2 years or are just getting a prescription today, that is for all new and existing patients. So that's the great thing. Great question.
Sorry, I have one more question, just that came into my head personally. What if somebody is considering Darzalex or daratumumab or Faspro and wants to learn more about the medication? Would this be a good program? Could they connect with a nurse navigator to ask them their questions? Or is it only existing patients that are currently on treatment?
It is patients that have been prescribed the product. Right now it's support. It is definitely, if there are specific questions, what's great is our care navigators can also equip the patients with the right questions to ask. That's one of the best things about them touching base, is saying, hey, here's actually some really good specific questions you want to ask your care team. Sometimes patients don't feel like this is important, but a lot of questions are really important, or just a different question to ask, and also when to ask them. This is something you want to ask and find out beforehand, even as you're looking at a couple of different options. They can definitely provide them with the resources that they need. And there's plenty of resources, as we work with a lot of other advocacy groups that are out there for patients well before they're starting on any of the products and just have been recently diagnosed.
Hard questions are coming in, huh?
Yes, patients outside of the US. So we are launching with Puerto Rico. Right now it is just US and Puerto Rico.
Great.
All right, well, I think that might be the last for the short term, but I'm sure there'll be more questions coming in as on demand comes through. So I do want to make sure, just one, to thank you, Audrey, and thank everybody for inviting us and having Janssen have the opportunity to share these resources. It's so important to build them, but it's also more important to make sure that they're out there available and that the awareness is seen, so that you can find all of these resources from day one. Just making sure, Janssen right now has an unwavering commitment to the fight against multiple myeloma, and is really looking to constantly advance in the standard of care and really continuing the pursuit of that cure. But we also want to make sure to help access to treatment for all the hard work that people are going through, and to find new ways really to stay motivated, really, and help you with your treatment plans. And trust, we are rooting for you as a patients every single day. So please spread the word on how, one, just the medications, resources, and programs like this can help others that you may know, especially those that may be dealing with some health inequities. And as you know, Darzalex.com and JanssenCompass.com are just the beginning of a lot of resources, and we hope to be able to share many, many more.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for this presentation, for taking the time to prepare it and to share it. I will be in contact with you guys so that we can get those resources and include them in our follow-up email that we send within 48 hours of the event's conclusion, so that we can make sure that we're sharing those websites that you mentioned, and even those PDFs that you mentioned, so that we're able to help patients the way that we have shared today. So thank you all. And we'll finish with some outro announcements, if that's okay with you guys. I accidentally muted myself. Don't want to mute myself during the outro announcements. All right. So our next meeting is going to be on November 9th. And we are going to be talking about cancer survivorship, optimizing your wellness. Some questions that will be answered during this presentation. What is survivorship and why is it so important? What are some potential strategies for establishing a survivorship plan? And how can we avoid toxic positivity while still striving to control our emotional wellness? How do we create healthy boundaries around our diagnosis? And what are some additional components and consideration of survivorship care? So you can learn the answer to these questions and more by joining us next month on November 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern. You may be interested in other myeloma crowd community events that we have coming up. On the 14th, tomorrow, is the Myeloma Caregivers chapter. We're going to be hearing from a caregiver who took care of his wife after a stem cell transplant and a woman who took care of her husband after a CAR T therapy, and talk about what does it really look like from a caregiver's perspective these after the recovery of these procedures or during the recovery of these procedures. Then the 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern is our immunotherapy treatment chapter. We're going to be talking about infection risks and the importance of vaccinations in people with myeloma. As we know, our patient population is immunocompromised because of the way that myeloma works in our body and because of the medications that are being given. And so we want to make sure, especially as we enter flu season and with COVID still out there, that we are aware of those infection risks and that we are making sure that we are preventing further infection risk. The 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern is the Connect with the Myeloma Crowd chapter. We're going to be talking about HealthTree University and how you can gain knowledge and power and become a more empowered patient, like Kurt talked about today, through learning more about the disease and the treatments that could be given to you. And then Wednesday, October 20th at 1 p.m. Mountain is our Mountain West Myeloma chapter. That's a regional chapter for the Intermountain area. And we're going to be learning about the POWER program with coordinator Darren Walker. And that's a fitness program for people that are in the area, either virtually or in person, because physical health matters for myeloma patients. The link to sign up for any of those events and even more events that I have not mentioned is found at the bottom of this slide, and it will be sent out in the follow-up email within 48 hours of the event's completion. Again, a thank you to our sponsors, Bristol Myers Squibb, Takeda Oncology, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Adaptive Biotechnologies, Oncopeptides, Janssen Oncology, AbbVie, Sanofi, Amgen Oncology, and Genentech. Thank you to each of you for joining us today, helping us build a strong myeloma crowd community. We appreciate you and hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.